Throughout history, mysterious lights in the sky have sparked wonder, fear, and speculation. Are they natural phenomena, man-made illusions, or something far more extraordinary? A message from life beyond our world. Today we explore the world's most mysterious encounters with unexplainable lights. From the chilling depths of Rendlesham Forest, the Roswell Incident, the haunting Marfa Lights, to the chaos of the Battle of Los Angeles. Are these phenomena mere tricks of nature? Or could they be undeniable evidence of extraterrestrial life visiting our planet? Let's have a look at the aliens that might be living among us.
Never seen anything like it before then, and I've never seen anything like it since then.
Set against the turbulent backdrop of the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor, one of the United States' most baffling aerial mysteries. Birds and blimps to enemy aircraft, and even the possibility of visitors from another world. Yet one fact remains undeniable. What was witnessed in the skies that night was truly an unidentified flying object, a UFO.
December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Reports of strange flying objects in the sky are older than the United States. Some of them reported in scientific journals that date back to the 16th century, but they've usually been classed with Loch Ness monsters and relegated to the Sunday supplements. Until World War II showed us that some of the most fantastic dreams can be very real, like atomic bombs, for instance. And since the close of the war, hundreds of reports of strange objects in the sky have been filed with the Air Force, and most of them have been easily explained. Experimental jet aircraft, weather balloons, reflected ground lights, unusual cloud formations, and so on.
February 23rd, 1942. The sighting of a Japanese submarine off the coast of Santa Barbara, California, heightened fears of a mainland invasion. As the sun set, the shelling began. February 24th, 1942, 7:18 p.m. That evening, warnings of a further invasion by naval intelligence put much of the Los Angeles coastline under yellow alert. Tensions eased over the next few hours, prompting a white alert to be issued. February 25th, 1942. Air raid sirens penetrated the night silence. Radars pinpoint an unidentified flying object approaching the metropolis, forcing a blackout. LA descended into darkness as the gunners prepared for the invasion. Was it imminent?
It's a well-known story within UFO history.
Anti-aircraft guns went into action against unidentified aircraft in the Los Angeles area shortly after 3 a.m. Pacific wartime this morning. The anti-aircraft guns began barking during a blackout ordered by the 4th Interceptor Command at 2:25 a.m. The unidentified object, which some sources thought might be a blimp, moved slowly down the Pacific coast from Santa Monica and disappeared south of Long Beach.
They spotted an object in the sky over Los Angeles. Basically, an oval object, and they had anti-aircraft batteries at the ready, and off they went. Fired thousands of rounds at this thing. It was caught in the searchlights, of the city. And of course, it's gone down in UFO law because there was no attack ever on the mainland of the United States by the Japanese. So some people said, well, perhaps this oval-shaped object was a UFO. Well, this made headlines in the newspapers. And the reason it didn't get hit is because it's not of this earth.
Captured by a Los Angeles Times photographer, an iconic image offered a chilling glimpse into the source of Los Angeles's most terrifying air raid.
Black and white picture. You see the searchlights all converging on an object in the sky. There's some anti-aircraft fire around it. And it looks like when the searchlights, are all linked together, all come together, that there is some kind of object within it. That's fueled speculation as to what it may or may not have been.
But the story doesn't end in the City of Angels. Our journey takes us to the windswept plains of New Mexico, where another enigmatic event would forever change the way we view the skies. In the small, dusty town of Roswell, a mystery unfolded that would cement its place in UFO lore. This is the Roswell Incident, a case shrouded in secrecy, rife with rumors of government cover-ups and nearly erased from public memory. What truths lie buried in the desert sands? What was being hidden from us?
So it is known as the Cosmic Watergate even today. Even the skeptics will agree that something crashed at Roswell. There's no denying it. The Air Force agrees that something crashed there. It's a question of what, who do you believe, what evidence do you have to support it. We expect the cowboys and Indians to come riding past. It's rocks, sand, cactus. The townsfolk have a saying about Roswell that it's 200 miles from nowhere, and it pretty much is.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army. Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
What they recovered was supposedly a vehicle not of this world, a flying saucer. The airbase that was just outside of the town was the Roswell Army Air Force. The Army and the Air Force were one group in those days.
There are claims that Roswell was a significant place for an alien spacecraft to be in action on this planet, because it was the home at that point of the 509th, which was the only squadron, airborne squadron, trained to drop nuclear weapons on the face of the Earth.
They were the ones responsible for the atomic bombs during the Second World War, although they weren't flown out of Roswell. They'd had a call from the local sheriff in the town, a chap called Matt Brazel, claimed to have found this strange debris on his ranch. So they sent Jesse Marcel to investigate. He brought some of this debris back. En route back to the base in the early hours of the morning, he woke up his son, Jesse Marcel Jr., spread this material on the kitchen floor. His son picked this piece of material up that looked what they call an I-beam, with these strange symbols on. And his father said to him, "Son, you may be the first to see writing from another world." Apart from the I-beam that is described by his son, One of the most peculiar properties of this material was what they nicknamed memory metal. So it looked pretty much like aluminium, but it was extremely lightweight, almost had no weight at all, and then when you crushed it, you could crush it easily, and then you'd let go and it would just spring back into its previous shape with no creases, no marks. His son, who went on to become a doctor and also served in the military as a flight surgeon, said, "I've never seen anything like it before then, and I've never seen anything like it since then." Now, for whatever reason, Roswell Army Air Force did issue an official press release saying that they had discovered a flying disc on a rancher's land, and some of it was being sent to higher headquarters. That particular press release went around the world. Sent out a second press release saying, "Sorry, we got it wrong. It wasn't a flying disc. It was actually just a weather balloon." They brought in the press photographers, and there's a set of photographs, and there is Major Marcel holding bits of this material, which is clearly a weather balloon. However, Major Marcel said, "That is not the material that I collected from Matt Brazel's ranch." The allegation is that they did somehow a swap. The peculiar thing is that Major Marcel was quite well qualified to identify weather balloons, because they used to launch weather balloons from their own base every day because they needed to know the weather, because they had aircraft in and out of there. And it was only, I think, 2 months before this incident he'd actually been qualified to do this work. He knew a weather balloon when he saw it, and he was adamant until his dying day that the material he collected was certainly no weather balloon.
In the stillness of the Rendlesham Forest, hazy lights pierced through the treetops, witnessed by military personnel stationed nearby. It was late December 1980, just after Christmas, when this extraordinary event unfolded, becoming the most famous UFO encounter in British history. But was it a hoax, or a visit from beings beyond our solar system? Eyewitness accounts tell of strange lights and even physical contact with an otherworldly craft. Yet skeptics propose alternative explanations, natural phenomena, or perhaps an elaborate prank.
The biggest cases in the UK, often given the name, Britain's Roswell, happened in Rendlesham Forest in Suffolk. Rendlesham Forest lay between the twin bases of RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters. Now, in 1980, they were an American base. It's not a backward little, RAF station. It had nuclear weapons stored there. Now, in 1980, they were on high alert because there was tensions throughout Russia and some of the Soviet bloc countries. Some events happened in late December 1980 over a period of 3 nights.
There was apparently a sighting of a UFO there. There's subsequently a document came to light which is known as the Holt Memo, because Charles Holt, who was the acting base commander that night, wrote up the events. And he said that his men went out to investigate strange lights in the forest. And what's subsequently been claimed is that they encountered a UFO and that there were aliens involved, and that this may actually have been some collusion between the American military and the aliens to do with a craft that needed to come down somewhere to effect its own repairs.
First night, some strange lights were seen in the forest, and one of the security police saw this and asked if he could go and investigate. So 3 base security personnel were sent. They travelled into Rendlesham Forest, which was then public land. It was not military land. One stayed with the vehicle because they were having problems with their communications. Jim Penniston and John Burroughs were the two airmen that went into the forest. They could see this thing in amongst the trees. They claimed that as they approached it, what they saw was not just lights, it was a triangular shaped craft, either hovering or, on legs just above the ground. Red lights on the top, blue lights underneath. Wasn't that big, maybe the size of a medium-sized car. Jim Penniston claims he touched it. It felt warm and smooth, and there were these strange markings down the side of it. They walked around it, and then it moved off through the trees. They were then accompanied by their third colleague, and they tried to chase it through the trees, and it was gone. They reported this in the incident log when they returned to base. Then on the third night, the deputy base commander, Colonel Holt, was on site, and then they were having a post-Christmas dinner. Awards were being given out. The base commander was there, and one of the security came and said, Colonel had heard about what had happened, and they said to him, "It's back." "What's back?" "This is the UFO." So the colonel thought, "I'll take some men into the forest and I'll do away with this nonsense." Now, he wasn't in military uniform at the time, so he went and got changed first, picked up his small tape recorder, a little handheld thing, selected a few men, off they went. First problem they had these sort of diesel-powered lights. They're called light-alls, and they wouldn't work. They were arguing that there was no diesel in them, but of course they were full. So they proceeded into the woods, into the forest. The colonel was first taken to the location of the first night's encounter, and one of his colleagues had brought a Geiger counter along with him, and he waved it over the area, and they got higher readings, not dangerous, but higher readings where this object had supposedly been. They looked up in the tree canopy. It looked as if the branches were broken because the trees were quite densely packed. Looked like something had descended through the trees. Then out in the distance, the colonel could see this red-orange light, not high in the sky, but low down. So it looked almost like an eye blinking at you. And all the while he's recording.
At approximately 01:25 hours. The indentations look like something twisted as it sat down on them. Looks like someone took something and sat it down and twisted it from side to side. Very strange. Hey, this is eerie. Why don't you do the hot spots? This is strange. Here, somebody want to look at the spots in the ground? This is 148. We're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmers' barnyard animals. They're just very, very active, making an awful lot of noise.
They came to the edge of the forest, and then there was a farmer's field. Beyond the field was the farmhouse, and he said this orange thing was in the field. And it was so bright it lit up it reflected off the glass in the windows of the farmhouse, and it made the farmhouse look like it was on fire.
The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again? Yes, sir. Oh, dash the flashlights in. Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yeah, we're heading about 110 to 120 degrees from the site out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. About 2 clicks. Meter's dropped 3 to 4 clicks, getting stronger.
Now, some people have said what the colonel and his party were looking at was the lighthouse. There's a lighthouse out on the coast at Orford Ness. The colonel said, I could see the lighthouse as well as this. I knew what the lighthouse looked like anyway, and this thing was in the field.
Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow stare, a dark stare. It's like the pupil of an eye looking at you and winking.
This thing moved closer to them. They all got a bit edgy, and then it burst and it was gone. When they looked, somebody notified the colonel, look, and there was 3 or more objects in the sky. And they said at one point a beam of light was shot down towards them.
Okay, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal.
And it landed, you know, and I mean towards them. I don't mean a long way off. It was just a few yards away from them. He didn't know if this was a weapon or warning. You know, some of these lights were also seen over the weapon storage area.
400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down over here.
So they chased these lights through the forest for a couple of hours or more. And then he thought, well, I'm wet. There's nobody come, you know. He expected that you know, there might be an aircraft intercept or a helicopter, nothing, nobody. So decided to return to base. He reported it to his commanding officer. He was later asked to write a memo, which was just a 1-page thing that he wrote. And he sent that to the Ministry of Defence. Unbeknown to him, the Ministry of Defence sent one to the United States Air Force. And a few years later, that memo surfaced in the United States under the Freedom of Information Act, and the story then was made public. The colonel himself would never wanted anything made public, but once it was made public, more of those on site came forward. There is no doubt these people were genuine. There is no sense of a hoax or anything like that at all. He has no idea what it is. He's gone on the record, he's written an affidavit, as have many of the other airmen that were involved as well.
From the dense greenery of Surrey, we travel to the arid plains of Texas, where a century-old mystery dances across the desert. Known as the Marfa Lights, flickering orbs of illumination have been reported since 1883, mystifying locals and baffling scientists. First documented by Robert Reed Ellison, a young cowhand, the lights were initially thought to be Apache campfires. Yet no evidence of fire or human presence was found. Since then, countless witnesses have seen these supernatural orbs. They move against the wind, shimmer in various colors, and sometimes defy explanation entirely.
The Marfa Lights. Marfa's in Texas, in the United States. And it is one of several locations around the world where these strange lights are observed. There's no houses there, there's no roads, no cars, no street lights. To give you an example, there's a place in Norway called Hessdalen in central Norway. And they too have these strange lights. The Norwegians have studied this, and there is a 24-hour monitoring station in Hessdalen even now. In Australia, they call them the Min Min lights. In the UK, they've got various names, but they generally go under the term of the spook lights. And there's places in the Pennine chain of hills where these lights are seen on a fairly regular basis. There may not be lots of them, but they turn up year in, year out. And we have Bala in Wales. So there's locations in different parts of the world where these strange lights are seen, and Marfa is one amongst them.
Scientists have proposed theories ranging from tectonic stress beneath the Earth's crust, creating glowing Earth lights, to gases igniting in the desert air. Some claim superior mirages caused by temperature differences might be to blame. Others suspect the answer lies in natural gas reserves below the Marfa Desert.
How many people have seen the Marfa Lights? You know, certainly hundreds down the years. I've worked with a colleague by the name of Dr. Irina Scott. She lives in Ohio. She's seen the Marfa Lights. She went to visit a friend near there, and she too saw them. You know, she was as puzzled by them as anyone else. I've been to Hessdalen in Norway. Didn't see the lights, but they have caught the lights on radar. They've taken video of them and lots of photographs of them. What you find about these locations, like Marfa, they go back, if not decades, even centuries. And you usually find folk tales or ghostly paranormal tales originally associated with these lights.
Despite the scientific scrutiny, no single theory explains it all. To this day, the Marfa Lights remain a captivating mystery on the Texan horizon. The early hours of February 25th, 1942. Air raid sirens shattered the calm as radar tracked an unidentified object over Los Angeles.
This is, you know, downtown Los Angeles. You know, high above it, there must have been thousands, if not tens of thousands of people who at least saw some part of it that night. You know, by its very nature, with the searchlights and the anti-aircraft fire, you couldn't hide it. The civilians in Los Angeles panicked somewhat. They thought this was an attack by, you know, the armed forces of Japan.
Anti-aircraft guns filled the night with thunderous fire. The city plunged into chaos. Captured in a haunting photograph by the Los Angeles Times, the events of that night became etched in history as one of the most infamous UFO mysteries. Explanations ranged from weather balloons to enemy aircraft, but declassified documents later suggested the military had fired at nothing more than a weather balloon carrying a flare.
It was a weather balloon. You know, a weather balloon is something that is launched even today. We still use them. It goes into various parts of our atmosphere and does, you know, what it says on the tin. It reads the weather, not just from its location, but it can carry equipment, you know, sometimes to test the weather in other areas or other parts of the atmosphere. And of course, that goes back to the ground. There was thousands of rounds of anti-aircraft fired at whatever this may or may not have been. And of course, nothing was shot down. You know, nothing. No weather balloon, no Japanese bomber, no flying saucer, nothing.
Yet no wreckage was ever found, and Japanese involvement was ruled out. Theories of extraterrestrial visitors have persisted, fueling the enigma of the Battle of Los Angeles, a mystery that to this day defies definitive explanation.
Roswell died for decades. Nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman met quite by chance Major Marcel in the late 1970s. And that's really when the investigation began. In the 1990s, it hit the headlines again for a whole host of reasons. And another investigation took place, this time on an official level. And the United States Air Force provided a huge, great tome, a huge, massive book about Roswell, saying that it was now still a weather balloon, but these weather balloons were part of a secret monitoring device, which was called Project Mogul. Basically, Project Mogul launched some equipment into the higher atmosphere to check for Soviet nuclear experiments, tests.
It was discontinued for two reasons. First of all, because it was only limited in its effectiveness, and secondly, because the Americans managed to find better ways of spying on the Russians.
So Project Mogul was top secret, but the equipment that they were using was just ordinary. It was still weather balloons. Somebody said, well, according to some of the eyewitnesses that have subsequently come forward, there was also dead bodies found at the crash site.
So I never talked about it again. I never mentioned it to anybody.
Not by Major Marcel, but others. And when they were saying dead bodies, they meant aliens.
One theory links the incident to Operation Paperclip, suggesting the craft was a secret Nazi flying machine brought to the US after World War II, called the Bell. This experimental craft allegedly failed during a test flight. Grainy hoax footage of alien autopsies and government cover-ups have blurred fact and fiction. While some believe the crash was extraterrestrial, others maintain it was a failed military experiment. Whatever fell from the skies in Roswell, its secrets remain tightly guarded, leaving the truth tantalizingly out of reach.
Press release, i.e. the press release put out by Walter Haut that said that they'd captured a flying saucer, was probably a pretty bad error of judgment in the heat of the moment, because they realized that they'd got some of their own technology and they didn't want people to know that there were experiments going on locally, and they completely over-egged the press release, which meant that they had to retract it very, very quickly. But that's the only major mistake I think they made.
You know, if you wanted to hide something that you were testing, then it's the perfect place. You know, Trinity, the place where the first atomic bomb was tested, is not that far away in the desert. And of course, when they exploded the first atomic bomb, they just told the locals it was a dynamite shack that had blown up. You think, well, if any UFO event has the possibility of being an alien spaceship, then you would put this in that category. So you cannot prove it conclusively one way or another, but I would say the odds lie in the favour of it looking like that.
I'm truly sceptical about the alien thing, and there are a number of reasons to be sceptical about it. First of all, let's just do a reality check on this. There were lots and lots of UFO books published between the early 1950s and about 1980. And a number of those played up certain cases that were taken to be hugely important and hugely spectacular, including the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case. Roswell's virtually non-existent in those books. There are other crashed saucer cases around then, so I'm skeptical because it just doesn't turn up. No information appears to leak from it.
However, you have to keep an open mind. Me personally, I sit on the fence. I believe something peculiar happened there. I don't believe the weather balloon or Project Mogul, it doesn't fit. The evidence that the Air Force have provided doesn't fit. Would not surprise me, however, if it wasn't something that the military themselves were experimenting with that was quite gruesome, hence the reason to keep it quiet. But I don't believe any of the balloon baloney it's called. When it comes to UFO cover-ups, if you think about it from a military perspective, if you are testing something that, for whatever reason, strays into an area where it comes in contact with the public, the general public, then the perfect cover-up is to call it a UFO, because people would go running around looking for something that simply didn't exist at that time. And in reality, it was something that the military had been messing with. The authorities in any country, it is their duty to keep secrets in the first place. That's part of what they do. So they can keep things very secret. Things happen that shouldn't. It would never surprise me if there's some of the UFO events that we perhaps look at in different parts of the world are not something that's man-made and has gone not as planned, shall we.
In the world of British ufology, no case is more enticing than the incident at Rendlesham Forest. In the 40 years since the alleged extraterrestrial encounter took place, many researchers have attempted to uncover the truth surrounding Britain's Roswell. Investigations into the event has given rise to both skeptical and scientific conclusions, riddled with their own contradictions. What gave off these strange lights? Were they man-made, a natural phenomena, or visitors from a distant world?
Well, one of the things about all the witnesses at Rendlesham, including Colonel Holt, is their credibility. He wasn't sent to, England for an easy ride. He's been involved with returning prisoners from Vietnam, for example, and, so he had a long and illustrious career in the military. They had all kinds of training, not just walking around with a dog, and a flashlight. You make up your own mind, was this something that the military were testing? Orford Ness has a history of military testing. It's where some of the first radar was tested, beginning of in the Second World War, for example. But would you test something where there's a storage of nuclear weapons? I'm not so sure you would. So then you look at the other alternatives. The skeptics will say that over the 3 nights, a number of things happened that they all misidentified. There was, the lighthouse, the re-entry of a satellite or whatever. But the witnesses said, no, I saw this up close and personal, and I've met the colonel, listened to what he had to say, I think it's highly unlikely that he would misidentify anything, let alone the lighthouse. He went to speak to the lighthouse keeper. And he says the lighthouse has 3 coloured lights on it. The red one goes out to sea because red means don't come here. So if you were seeing a red light, you must have been out at sea. He has no idea what it is. He's gone on the record, he's written an affidavit, as have many of the other airmen that were involved as well. One little intriguing thing, as I mentioned, the first 2 airmen that went into the woods were Penniston and Burroughs. Now, Jim Penniston is the one that said he saw a craft, touched it, etc. His colleague, John Burroughs, who was standing just a few yards away, looking at the same thing, said, I never saw any craft, I only saw lights. Lord Hill Norton, former Admiral of the Fleet, said that either these gentlemen saw what they claimed to have seen, or they were all under the influence of something illegal, which either way, surely that must be of defence significance.
Could these unexplainable lights cutting through the darkness be more than just phenomena? Could they be the silent beacons of extraterrestrial life reaching out across the void? We just might never actually find out.
Well, originally, of course, it was fear and superstition that was, that were accountable. Ghosts, phantoms this, phantom of that. As we moved into the 20th century, perhaps they were phantom airships, and as we moved further into the century, perhaps there were beings from another world. But basically, all you're seeing is lights, and it depends on your own perception as to what you make of them. Studies have been done at various locations. As we mentioned previously, the Ministry of Defence in the UK did a study on UFOs called the Condign Report. And it came to the conclusion that UFOs were unidentified atmospheric phenomena. In other words, strange balls of light, they call them plasmas. So the number of scientists and scientific studies claim that these could be, as yet, an unidentified type of aerial phenomena, natural.
Whether skeptic or believer, one thing is clear: the skies hold mysteries we may not yet fully comprehend. From celestial events to unexplained aerial phenomena, the stories we've explored today remind us of the vast unknown.
There are those, certainly when you look at Marfa, they think there is a skeptical solution, if you want to go down that route, that it is, caused by traffic, cars in the distance, and these lights are somehow reflected in a certain way, and that's what people are seeing, even though you can't see the cars. And that could be a possibility. But when you go to places like Hessdalen, These lights are seen down in the valley. There's only about 200 people live there. The locations where they've been seen, there are no roads. And in the winter, it gets down to -20 and about 10 feet of snow. I know, I was there in the winter, I can guarantee that. And they have caught them on radar. They have filmed them both in movie film, you know, and still photographs. So there is a very real phenomena there.
Perhaps we are not alone. Perhaps these lights, objects, and encounters are glimpses of a greater cosmic reality, or simply reflections of our curiosity, our fears, and our imagination. Until science or transparency brings definitive answers, the question will remain: what's out there?
The Air Force then said, well, they were actually crash test dummies, not related to Project Mogul at all, but we used to have these large wooden mannequins that we dropped from a high altitude, as you know, to test parachutes and so on. But the only thing that was wrong with that is they didn't start using those until the 1950s. And of course, the Roswell Incident happened in 1947. So they got the wrong decade as well. In all, the Air Force had given out 4 different aspects of what this was. First of all, it was a flying disc. Then, no, it was a weather balloon. Then, oh, sorry, no, it was Project Mogul, which was still weather balloons. And the dead bodies were crash test dummies. All we forgot, they were from the 1950s. So they have 4 different interpretations of what happened. That's why one amongst many reasons why people are suspicious of the official version. The various mysterious lights will probably turn out to be some kind of atmospheric phenomenon that as yet is understood by mainstream science and has nothing to do with ETs at all. Unknown. The official position is unknown.
Could these unexplainable lights cutting through the darkness be more than just phenomena? Could they be the silent beacons of extraterrestrial life reaching out across the void? We just might never actually find out.